I learned very early, you need to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
A company is called a company because it's not just one person, right?
60% of the investment decision is the people. It's about the team.
It has to be based on reality, right?
I think a lot of businesses fail because they make too many assumptions and not enough fact and research.
Power of network, it really is incredible.
Time is more valuable than money. Money can be recycled. Time can't.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that helps professional services firms from around the world increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Andrew Harwood, the managing partner of Windsor Swan, a boutique professional services firm that provides fractional CFOs to founders at the startup, scale-up, and transformation stages of their businesses, where a full-time CFO would often be cost prohibitive. He's also the co-founder of Playground, an innovative venture growth studio and value creation partner for ambitious founders and aligned investors. By offering tailored support across every aspect of a company's operating system, Playground helps eliminate bottlenecks and accelerate progress with the purpose of closing the gap between vision and execution so companies can move faster, think smarter, and scale with confidence. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Saeed. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I always find that I find my conversations with fractional CFOs particularly fascinating and particularly great, primarily because you have an outlook towards business which really does help the founder, right? And it's a function of the business. The finance function of the business is often looked at as an area where you can understand basic numbers, but when it comes out to forecasting into the future and things like that, it can get a little bit tricky sometimes, and having an actual certified practical fractional CFO of any kind massively helps the trajectory of the business moving forward. But before we jump into the general conversation, I wanted to, for our viewers and listeners out there who maybe don't know who you are, could you share a little bit more so about yourself and a little bit more about your company?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically, I've been in business now for 40 something years and seen an awful lot of change and transformation over the last sort of 40, 50 years, and it's been a real roller coaster ride. And I started life as an accountant, like so many people in my profession, but found I was way too interested to be an accountant. So I decided that I would go the sort of corporate finance route, using all the knowledge that I acquired during my training. And I actually ended up being a multi-time entrepreneur, had multiple startups and multiple exits. I got the entrepreneurial bug quite early and, sort of used that, but always had my foundation of being a finance person central. But the reason why I managed to enjoy such reasonable success was purely because I learned very early, you need to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And that was my guiding principle, if you like. I knew what I was good at. In business, there's all sorts of things that you need to be good at. But if you're not good at it, find somebody who is, and find somebody who's smarter than you on that particular thing. And so I found my success in business came from building great teams. So, and that sort of led me through my career. I've had a career that's taken me on a journey as an entrepreneur, but also as a corporate CFO. Following one exit, ended up as a divisional financial director for a PLC. So, I've been on that whole journey. And actually, I went through that journey. I was basically raising money for myself, building companies, exiting companies, helping other people raise money for their businesses. But I ended up on the other side. I went over to the dark side, where I went from being a entrepreneur founder to being a venture capitalist and venture capital fund manager. So I had a unique perspective in doing that because basically I went from one side to the other. Poacher turned gamekeeper, if you like.
I love it.
That, again, whole new range of experiences and knowledge and understanding throughout. I've just tipped 60 now, and I still believe you can learn something new every day. And that continual desire, I don't feel 60. Certainly don't act 60. But I feel that, there's still new opportunities. There's always innovation. There's always something different to learn about. And that sort of stood me in good stead. And, so over the last sort of, 10, 15 years, I've sort of been on the outside of venture capital, sitting between venture capital and entrepreneurs to act in an advisory capacity as a fractional CFO. So bringing about, like you said, basically with finance in business, most people tend to look at it as an afterthought. I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs who, so who looks after your accounts? The wife does it. And with all due respect, she's not a qualified accountant. She's not a finance person, but she's looked after the household budget. So now she looks after the books for the company. And that's not necessarily the most appropriate way when you're looking to build a business. So what a fractional CFO does, it provides, a lot of particularly startups and those that are seeking investment and venture capital are looking for a C-level financial director, but they can't afford to employ one. And that's where the fractional CFO role can actually give you access to everything you need on an as-required basis. We're expensive animals, and rightly so. We bring a lot of value, to the process. But, to employ somebody like myself, not many people can afford a six-figure salary to employ somebody like me to do the job that needs to be done. So fractional gives you the opportunity to access that experience and knowledge, but without all the cost of employing somebody to do that. And so that's the sort of role, and my colleagues provide that sort of role for startup, scale up, and transformation businesses, essentially.
I think you touched on some really interesting points there. I want to start off by saying that one of my favorite quotes is, "Every day is a school day." Right?
I like that.
And it's what you said with regards to you never stop learning. And there's so many things to constantly be learning in the world of business. And building teams is fundamental to creating a thriving company. A company is called a company because it's not just one person, right? It's a number of people. You build a culture, you build a group of people to go in a similar kind of mission, a way of moving forward with a specific goal in mind. And so 100% building teams is such an important aspect, and having and finding the right people in the organization to build is crucial. I think that's a challenge that a lot of business owners face in finding the right experts or the right people who are better. Because as a business owner, you wear a lot of hats, right? And it's part and parcel of being a business owner. It's like, okay, well, you brought it up from the ground up. You have to think about absolutely everything. And not everything is your skill. You're better at some things than others. A lot of founders might be better at sales. Some are better at marketing. Some are better at actually delivering the service and not so much the growth side of things. And really understanding who to bring into the organization, whether it is someone coming in on a fractional basis or full-time employee, or just a consultant coming in, understanding what needs to be done to push the business to the next stage is such a crucial element of any founder's journey, right? So I really wanted to touch on your perspective as a venture capitalist now, right? Because naturally you're approaching things with an investor mindset in terms of how a business should be approaching growth and how they should be approaching the next phases as a startup, scale up, or transformation business. Talk to me about what you look at as a venture capitalist within an organization, and what marks a good business for you.
Well, it's a number of factors, and it's a very long and complex process. But essentially, as an investor, you look at businesses, you're looking for angle, opportunity, timing, but most importantly, the people. 60% of the investment decision is the people. It's about the team. It's about, and I know we've been talking a lot about team, but it's so critical because as an investor, if I'm going to give you money, I have to have 100% confidence in your ability to deliver on the business plan promises that you are making. And, then comes down to, obviously we do a deep delve on numbers and, your strategies and you go to market and all this sort of stuff. But ultimately, it's about building up a level of trust that the person you are going to be investing in and the team around them are in for the long haul, are fully invested. In other words, because you don't want a situation where you invest a load of money in a business and the founder says, thanks, guys, that was great, but I've seen something shiny over here. I'm going to do this instead. And as an investor, you're then left with a company with nobody leading it. And so you need to have absolute confidence that the person you are backing is in for the long haul. The team around them are coherent and working together, and there's no potential fractions that might happen or anything that could upset the apple cart. So you do take a long look at the people that are going to be delivering the business plan promises. And also, are they over ambitious? And in lots of times, most people state that our numbers are conservative. No, they're not. The one thing I will say to listeners is the one word you do not want to put into your presentation with any investor is your numbers are conservative, because they're not. You have to look at numbers. You have to stand by your numbers. You have to believe in the numbers. They have to be ambitious enough to stretch yourselves. But normally you get a financial model. If somebody says they're going to do 100 million revenue, you'll halve it. You literally, as an investor, you'll look at it and halve it and say, oh, okay, what happens if? And so that's, those are the key points. But it is essentially about what's the angle, what's the opportunity, and what's the timing. Is it right? And a lot of people come to investors without any evidence of or proof of traction. There has to be that element of proof that what you are saying, the assumptions you are making, is based on some sort of foundation, some sort of evidence.
Yeah, it has to be based in reality, right? And at the end of the, a lot of people will come into will have business ideas, and they're very much ideas in their inception. And I guess you need to then apply what is actually happening in the real world and go, okay, where is the market? Typically in the UK, I think it's very common to go, okay, well, look at the US market. There's a company already doing this now. That's enough of a foundation to go, okay, well, we can do it in this market, right? It's just the real innovators, that's the disruptors. Those are the ones where it's like, even then you have to find some form of foundation.
Yeah, it's often said that if the United States sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. But the truth of it is you can't automatically, obviously the American market is a huge market. I do a lot of work with US companies and what have you. But it's also a different dynamic. It's a different mentality. It's a different culture. Obviously, there's an awful lot going on in the world at the moment, particularly stateside, that is quite disruptive and what have you. But you can't automatically think that something that is successful in the United States will be successful in the United Kingdom, Europe, or the rest of the world. There's a good chance it might be, because obviously it comes from a firm foundation. But the consumers in the United States have different attitudes to the consumers in the United Kingdom. So you have to prove whatever market you're going to go after. And the reverse is true as well. Don't assume just because you're successful in the United Kingdom that you can then go and break the boundaries of the United States, because it's 50 odd different countries. It's not one country, it's 50 different countries. And so, you've got to take a view that, yes, you look at the opportunities that are coming out of America. How do they apply? Would they then be adopted by a UK market? And you explore and you do your research. And I think a lot of businesses fail because they make too many assumptions and not enough fact from research.
Sure. Yeah. Which leads me to really say that I had an interesting conversation on the podcast recently about how the different markets are and the language involved in different markets, right? And going to America, so we work with a lot of American clients as well. And when we first went over, one of the biggest things was slight language tweaks that we wouldn't think twice with our UK based clients. But when you go over there, it was a simple case of a diary and calendar, right? And we'd say, we'll put it in the diary. And one of our clients turned around and he said, Said, what are you talking about with diary? Diary over here is like a journal. And then I was like, no, we mean calendar when we say diary. And it's just slight language change. And people think, and the assumption is, it's an English speaking country. It's a huge area. Everything is going to be the same. And it's not. Markets are different.
Completely different.
Mindset, as you mentioned, are completely different. And so it's very important to educate yourself in understanding what the differences are and what market you're actually approaching. So I think it's really interesting you mentioned that. I want to jump into, we had a previous conversation about a consultancy model and your opinion on how that is changing and evolving now with the new landscape that's evolving in our market now. Talk to me about what the old consultancy models from the years that have gone by were and what's happening now in the market.
Yeah, it's interesting. There has been a sort of step change. I've noticed it over the years that the traditional consultancy model, pretty much that was developed in the sort of, well, forever, but you saw a lot in the 80s and the 90s and what have you, was the basic premise that if you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish, you'll feed him forever. And that was very much the sort of foundation of the consultancy approach, whereby, basically what we're going to go in and educate these people and help them learn and understand. And that is consultancy. As the world has changed and technology has come on in leaps and bounds, and everything, particularly with the advent of sort of social media over the last sort of 10, 15 years, what you're seeing now is things are moving so fast. Decisions have to be made quickly. Actions have to be taken quickly. And what is happening now with the consultancy model is basically that everyone says, look, I don't need to learn. I don't want, just give me the fish. I don't want to learn how to, just give me the fish. And so this is where, fractional roles, for example, which I've had for, obviously been doing this for some time, but a fractional role is about rolling up your sleeves, getting in the trenches and working with your clients on a day-to-day basis or on a weekly basis or whatever the arrangement is. They don't want you to show them how to do it. They just want you to do it. And so you deliver on it. And in the process of, they will learn as they see what you do, they will learn from what you do. And then at some point in the future, they may well turn around and say, do you know what? Thanks, Andrew. We don't need you anymore. You've taught us so much. Basically, typically I go into a fractional CFO role, probably thinking I'm there going to be sort of 3-6 months. Most of my clients have been multiple years before they have the courage to replace me. So, I think, it is this ongoing process, but I just think the old consultancy model has changed so much. And I think, consultancies as a whole are having to change their approach. And there's an old saying that about consultants are like castrated bulls. All they can do is advise. And the other say is basically those that can do and those that can't teach. So I think that the sort of the more modern and progressive, I don't want to call them consultancy, agency, if you like. I think the consultancy model is dead, and I think this new hybrid agency model is the way forward for now. Obviously, like everything changes. But for now, I think this approach where we're in this on-demand society, so, we need to, as consultants, we're now agents, we act on demand.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the approach.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. We're living in the information era, right? And so we're peppered with different kinds of pieces of content, lots of information coming through, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, whether it's TikTok, whether it's whatever social media you're on, you're being bombarded with new bits of information, occasional pieces, whatever it might be. And so what now has happened is that if people really want to find the information, and with the rise of the internet, AI, that type of, people can go out and find that information. If they want to educate themselves, they can very much go out and educate themselves. But you said it there. It's not necessarily now about just educating yourself. It's about shortening the period of time to get to the next level or to the next stage that you want to get to. And so then the way I look at it, and we're very big on, we can provide consulting, but we often come in and go, we do implementation. right? So we come in and we just go, okay, well, this is, you want growth, we will get you to growth, but you need systems to be able to get consistent and repeatable growth to come into your business. And so we will do everything so that you can then just experience the growth. Obviously, you have to take sales calls and that type of stuff, but there's different tiers to everything. But there's an element of, the way we break it down, it's done with you, which is essentially consulting. Will tell you what to do, and then you can go away and do it if you want. Or done for you, which is essentially we come in and take everything off your hands, and then move the business forward. And I think that there lies the key in what you said. It's very much a case that people don't want to wait anymore. People don't want to be educated as much anymore. If they want to build an in-house team, that's a different story, and that could happen and evolve over time. But until then, until they get to the point of like, okay, now it's the right time for that, they need people, they still need to grow, or they still need X, Y, and Z service or X, Y, and Z expertise to come in. But it's very much like an internal hire externally, right? And then being able to build on that. So I think it's really interesting you mentioned that, and the old model being very much dead now. And I would 100% agree with you. And those consultancies, even some of our clients, when we start working with them, they do implementation now. They're large management consulting firms, right? And they will literally be like, okay, well, we used to do consulting. Now we come in and we help with the implementation, because that's what clients want right now.
Yeah. That is in a necessity. It's just understanding what the client wants.
Exactly.
Not what you think they want.
Yes.
Or what you think they need. You have to understand your client. And I've got a mantra in all my communications. I always seek first to understand. And whenever I go into an initial client meeting, it's with a completely clean sheet of paper. I have no preconceptions. Yes, I'll do a little bit of research. I'll check accounts and what have you at company's house or whatever. But essentially, I'm going in there to learn, to understand. And I try and identify what the pain points are and what do they want to do to address them. What do they think is appropriate, and get to understand what they want.
Absolutely. It's just the fundamental element of any kind of, when you're running a business, you're trying to provide value. And the only way you can provide value is by understanding where their pains are, where their problems are, and coming in and solving those pains and problems. As soon as you do that, the value is there, right?
That is business 101.
Exactly.
And a lot of people skip that bit.
Exactly.
And when they try to, and this is why a lot of startups fail, is because I've got this great idea. Okay. Right. Okay. And then we're going to build this app. We're going to do this. It's going to do this. It's going to be amazing. Everyone will want to buy it.
Yeah.
And they don't. Shock.
Yeah.
The whole build it and they will come routine. It doesn't, there is no such thing as build it and they will come, because they won't. You've got to understand what the pain people are going through. And then once you've got something that solves that pain, how do you communicate that? How do you find your audience? And sometimes you need to educate your audience, because they might be having pain, but they don't know why. So you need to educate them as to why they're having the pain in the first place. But, once you've identified your audience, then you have to engage your audience. And you should be doing all that before you get anywhere near developing a product or building an MVP. Most people make the mistake. They do it in reverse. They build the product, they create the value proposition, and then they try to find the audience, and they fall over. Why? They've probably run out of money because they've spent all the money developing product, and they've got numbers, warehouses full of product and SKUs everywhere and all this sort of stuff, and they haven't got a single customer. You've got to get the customer first. Engage with the audience, understand what they need, what do they want, what pains are you solving, get to really know your customer, then give them what they need and want to solve their pain.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, even some of the biggest companies in the world, for example, Airbnb and Twitch and these types of companies, they were different companies. And from what they are now, they were completely different companies. I think Airbnb, they were going around and it was, what was it? It would just be for parties or something like that. Like you could hire out a sofa or something for a party. And that's evolved into a multi-family let kind of empire that you can just run from your own phone, or essentially. So it's insane how these things evolve. But it's because they were willing to go, okay, what is the actual problem we're solving? And then actually pivoting to it as well. So I think, yeah, 100%, especially with the MVP element of any kind of business, you need to go out into, I think this is one of the big things. People are scared to go out to the market to be told that they're wrong, right? And so then when they go out to the market and when they're told that they're wrong, they kind of go, no, I'm right. So they'll retreat back and go, no, I'll keep doing what I do. And then the failure eventually happens. Whereas if you go out and go, and we have a saying internally, is like, do you want to be right or do you want to be rich, right? And it's essentially that. It's like with regards to going out to the market, if you solve a problem, the business will thrive because you're going out and you find your way of gaining kind of customers, use the right strategies, educate your market if you have to. 100%. I couldn't agree more with what you've said. I could talk about this all day, Andrew, but we have to jump into the next section of the podcast, which is what we call the entrepreneur's room.
Okay.
And that's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders think and operate when running their business. So the first question I like to ask at this stage of the podcast is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
That's a very interesting question. Obviously, I'm very proactive, not only in business development and working with the team, but obviously I never lose sight of actually working with clients as well. Because I don't know it's only by working with clients and understanding what's happening in their businesses that I believe I can see what's happening in the world and understanding and what's going to impact our business. I'm, again, lucky that I've managed to surround myself with an amazing team of people. And there's an awful lot smarter people in the organization than me, I can tell you that, particularly at Playground. But on a day-to-day basis, is about, coordinating, striving for. We've got a saying in Playground, which is basically, how do we make the boat go faster? And that came from the British rowing team at the Olympics. I'm a huge Formula One fan, and success in Formula One is measured in tenths of a second. And it's about, how do you make little adjustments to make your boat go faster or make the car go faster. And it's exactly the same. That's our approach in business. And I look on a daily basis is, what can I do today, or what can I investigate or instigate or analyze that will help us make the boat go faster? And I suppose that's how we fuel growth, or certainly I fuel growth in my agency and in Playground, is what can we do differently today that we weren't doing yesterday that could make the boat go faster tomorrow? But you're always strategizing, but you then have to test those strategies. Don't implement or execute until you've tested. And then you implement and execute on those that are successful in the tests. We do a lot of go-to-market work, and, you've got to do split testing. And, I've been testing for years. I can remember back before the wonderful things of the internet and email and all that sort of stuff, we used to do a lot of direct mail. And we were testing everything. We were even testing, basically what color envelope to use.
Yeah, wow.
Do we write the address on the envelope, or do we type the address on the envelope? Do we use a franking machine, or do we use the stamps? Should the stamp go on straight or crooked? And so, all these were, and you would measure everything. Now, in those days, it used to take weeks and months to measure responses. Now, with the benefit of the internet and things like Google AdWords and what have you, you can test headlines in minutes. And, so we're doing the same things, we're just doing them a lot faster. And AI is now helping that process to become even faster.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. And I was just about to ask you, especially with direct mail, obviously, as a marketer myself, like we love A/B testing, we love split testing. That's all you do to understand where the value is, where the winning ad campaigns would be. Yeah, direct mail. I can imagine that you go with a hypothesis, and then you have to wait a while to get the results back, right? And to understand, okay, this is the right way. This is this. So I think shortening that time is a huge in the world of marketing. But because of that, it's also meant that the volume of competitors that are able to also do the same thing has increased, which then increases the difficulty that arises amongst the world of marketing and saturated markets. It really then becomes a question of, okay, who tests the most, who tests the most angles, and what's your process for testing. It really goes into the details. So I think it's really interesting you mentioned that. As a leader of the business, what are the most important metrics for you when running the business?
Again, as a CFO, metrics are my world.
Yeah, this is why I love this.
It's because just not in marketing, you're measuring everything, but also across the business, you're measuring everything. I think, one of the big, for an agency or any sort of professional time-based organization, because ultimately that's what you're selling, time. And the thing is, time is more valuable than money. Money can be recycled. Time can't. Once you've sold that piece of time or not sold that piece of time, it's gone. You can't sell it again. So for me, one of the biggest metrics is utilization. The people that I work with and what have you, they hate me because I make them do timesheets and stuff like this. Not because I want to know what they're doing. What I want to understand is how is their utilization. If they've got a low utilization, in other words, the difference between billable and unbillable hours. If they've got a low utilization, what can we do to help improve that utilization? Because you've only got, typically 40 hours a week. If you're only billing 10 hours a week, and you're spending 30 hours a week doing, administration or accounting or some other function, what can we take off of you here to give you more time to do here or whatever? So utilization is critical. There was a firm that I was helped co-found, and then we sold out to a major PLC, and we were involved in engineering projects, technology for the roads. So big government contracts and what have you. We had something like 100 engineers that were all basically supposed to be working on billable projects. When I joined the firm, they were only getting like 55% utilization. So I started to analyze, what are they doing in the other 45% time? Because their job is purely and simply to work on these projects. What are they doing? And a lot of it was being taken up by project administration, which was unbillable. And so what I did was basically I employed 2 administrators. Purely their job was purely to administrate. I paid them £30,000 each per year, 60 grand. My utilization went from 55% to 75%. It put 2 million on the bottom line overnight for the cost of 60 grand. And that's why utilization is a key metric that is always worth looking at, reviewing, understanding, and monitoring on a daily basis, particularly in an agency or a time-based organization.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, because productivity is so important to understand how productive someone is in the work day or in the hours that they actually have available. And so the utilization measurement there can give you a direct ROI. You can measure the ROI that comes in by making statistical or effective decisions based off of the information that you and the data that you've gathered. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear that from a fractional CFO, because you approach it with a process, whereas I would probably go, okay, well, they're not working, give them more work and try and reduce. Like, it's very hypothetical, right? Unless you go down into the numbers.
It is, because the other key metric in that is what's known as the actual cost rate, ACR. Each resource, whether you pay them a salary or whether they're a freelance resource, they'll cost you X per hour. And if it's their employed, then obviously there's other benefits. You've got the employer's national insurance to take in consideration. You've got pensions to take into consideration. You've got other benefits to take in consideration. But what it will come down to is, what does that resource cost you per hour? And then the other metric that you are looking to establish is, what is the revenue over a course of a year per resource. And so, if your resource is costing you, I don't know, let's say £50,000 per year, and their revenue through utilization, their revenue they're generating is £250,000 per year. You've got you can instantly see, well, if I've got 100 people employed, that's 2.5 million or whatever. So
revenue per head massively, yeah. So
exactly. So it's about understanding each individual resource and what their impact on the business is and what their cost. And actually, you want them to be working, charging more hours. You want them to be generating more revenue, and you want them to earn more revenue, because the more they generate, the more they earn. So it can be very much success focused.
Absolutely. And moving into success focused and generating revenue, how are you currently growing the business? What kind of business development activities are you currently doing to grow the business?
Well, I mean, we're quite lucky. I mean, in terms of how we grow the business is we are heavily involved in networking, and we've built up a reliable network of a good source of lead generation. But we're always exploring multiple different marketing opportunities, because we do a lot of work in go-to-market. We should be doing that, but we understand, we get very detailed on what it is, what lane we're going down, who are we targeting, who is our audience. And we do a lot of work with venture capital firms, because there's what's known as, particularly in the last 10, 15 years, there's been like a real surge. It's like the entrepreneurial wave, if you like. There's been the entrepreneurial revolution. You've seen massive growth in new businesses starting up and what have you. And there was a big surge in particularly when SEIS, the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, was launched, created a surge in new businesses starting up and new businesses being invested in. Now, what's happened is that all these people are promising that they're going to exit their business in 3 to 5 years' time with a massive hockey stick projection, and we're all going to be masters of the universe. But the reality is that a lot of these investors, venture capital firms, private equity firms have all got what we call zombie investments. These zombie investments is they're too stubborn to go out of business, but they're not growing, and they're just stuck in limbo. And so we work with a lot of venture capital firms who introduce us to these potential, these opportunities whereby if they're open to it and receptive, how do we get them growing again? How do we get them to the next stage of investment? And we get a lot of those sort of introductions, and that takes up an awful lot of time. But those are really, really valuable, because if we could, if for every 10 companies a venture capital fund will invest in, they expect 5 to go bust, 4 will limp along towards average or be zombies. And then 1 in every 10 will give them a high multiple, which will fund the rest of it, if that makes sense. But they're all stuck with these investments that they can't get out of. They don't want to throw any more money at it. They haven't got any resource to put into it. And so they're coming to us and saying, if we make the introduction, would you go and have a look at these guys and see if you can, in some way, shape or form, help to transition them from back to, what they were promising to do, which is not happening, understand why, and are they open to getting back on course and heading for some sort of growth and exit. And so, and that comes through obviously having big, powerful relationships that have been built over many years with people like venture capital funds and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Power of network is something, it really is incredible. Just being able to tap into a good network is power in itself, especially with business. Andrew, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. It's been a fantastic conversation. You've shared.
It's been a pleasure. It's gone very quickly.
It's been really, really great. I like to end every single podcast with the same question, and that is, if you had a magic wand, you could wave one business problem, what would that be?
Okay, well, I suppose, I would want people to analyze more and work with evidence rather than just make an assumption and going for it.
Amazing. Great place to end it. Andrew, it's been a pleasure. For all those out there that might want to reach out to you and speak to you, where would they go? How would they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. Just put Andrew Harwood in there and you'll find me eventually. Basically, if you go to, we're in stealth a little bit on Playground at the moment, but you can contact me, Andrew at pgdo.vc.
We'll put everything in the show notes as well. Again, thank you very much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure. Thanks very much indeed.